Karen's father is quite wealthy, isn't he? Yes, when he passes, Karen's set to inherit a significant fortune. I reckon it could be around 100 million. Incredible. I can hardly wait. Once that happens, I'm hoping Karen might whisk me away on a luxurious vacation. Sounds delightful. Maybe I'll put in a request for a new car. James, what about you? Well, I've had my eye on a top-of-the-line gaming rig for ages. I wonder if I could subtly suggest it to her. Their conversation bubbled with excitement, oblivious to the solemn expression on my face just outside the door. I clutched my purse tightly. My name is Karen, and I first met my husband James at a bustling social club for professionals. Our shared interests sparked an instant connection, and we've been happily enjoying life together ever since. One day, my routine was disrupted by an unexpected call from my mother. Karen, your father has collapsed. What? My father, known for his jovial spirit and love for dad jokes, was the picture of health. He ran his own company with ease, making the idea of his collapse incomprehensible. Concerned for my father, I immediately left home and caught the next train to the hospital my mother had mentioned. My father was truly a gentle soul. Despite his busy schedule, he always made time for my brother and me, lifting us onto his shoulders and playing with us. I vividly recall his tears of joy as I read a letter to my parents at my wedding to James. The memory was etched in my mind. The thought of such a man falling ill was heart-wrenching. Refusing to accept the news, I hurried to the hospital where my mother sat by my father's side. As soon as I entered, my mother turned to me. Mom, how's Dad? Is he okay? Karen, please let's stay calm and I'll explain. Facing my father lying on the bed, his eyes closed, my mother detailed his condition. He had collapsed suddenly at work, prompting an urgent trip to the hospital. Despite numerous tests, no clear cause for his illness emerged. Further examinations might yield answers, but they also posed risks to his already fragile state. Consequently, my mother had opted to halt the tests. It appears your father may experience paralysis on the left side of his body. So, he'll need ongoing care. Yes, that's correct. Despite the weight of the news, my mother maintained a composed demeanor as she spoke. My mother had already resigned herself to caring for my dad. Contemplating this, I sensed my mother's resilience, yet I was also consumed by sadness at the prospect of my father's changed state. Struggling to contain my emotions, my brother burst into the room. How's Dad? He asked, breathless. My mother repeated the details of my father's condition to him as she had to me. Mom, you can't do this alone. I'm nearby. I'll come help. Thank you, but you need to prioritize your own life. You have your own family now. My brother, understanding, nodded. I understand. My brother had married years before I did and now has a 4-year-old daughter. The one with more flexibility in their schedule is me, the one without children. However, it would still take me an hour by train to reach our childhood home. I might be distant and it could take some time, but I won't leave all of this burden on you and Mom. If there's any change with Dad, don't hesitate to inform me. Agreed, but Karen, did you inform John before coming here? I suddenly realized I'd left home in a hurry without informing John. Seeing my expression, my brother added, be sure to reach out to him. He must be anxious. Leaving the hospital room swiftly, I found a quiet spot to call John. As soon as he answered, he asked, Karen, where are you? I've been worried sick. Hearing John's voice offered some comfort, yet tears welled up as I explained that my father had collapsed and would require care. Your lively dad. John's shock was palpable, yet his gentle words offered solace. Grateful for marrying him, I informed him of my return home. His gentle response was, I'll prepare dinner. Take care on your way back. With my father set to spend the night in the hospital, and my mother and brother returning home, I opted to head back as well. Arriving home, I found John had prepared my favorite meal. It must have been rough. Have something you love to lift your spirits, he said, pulling out a chair for me. His kindness moved me to tears. While John typically remains composed, his warmth during my lowest moments always touches me deeply. Thanking him for his support, I retired to bed early that evening. The following morning, feeling a bit more composed, I approached John with the idea of assisting in my father's care occasionally. He readily agreed. It turned out that John had already informed his parents about my father's condition, and they offered their assistance with household chores during my absences. I was pleasantly surprised by the full support extended by John's family. When I called to express my gratitude, John's mother chuckled and reassured me. Your father is like family to us. Don't worry about a thing. John's parents, much like him, typically exude composure. Their arrival at our home with smiles and offers of help with chores left me momentarily stunned, a gesture of familial warmth I hadn't experienced before my marriage. Initially, I had perceived my in-laws as somewhat distant, but perhaps I had misunderstood. I made sure to express my heartfelt gratitude to James and my in-laws for their unwavering support in caring for my father. Once a lively conversationalist, my father's ability to speak fluently was hindered by the paralysis on his left side. Yet there was a glimmer of hope in his right-handedness. Using a whiteboard, he conveyed his needs and shared his signature dad jokes through crude drawings and written messages, lifting our spirits despite his near-constant confinement to bed. While my brother offered assistance, it was predominantly my sister-in-law who took on the caregiving role. With her background in caregiving, she patiently and kindly instructed both my mother and me on how best to aid my father. My father, my mother, and I harbored concerns that my sister-in-law might balk at caring for my father, who wasn't related by blood. However, to our relief, she welcomed the responsibility with open arms. Her cheerful declaration, "Your father has brought me so much joy. Now it's my turn to bring him happiness," illuminated her kind nature, reaffirming my belief that my brother had chosen a remarkable partner. While my brother may have found an exceptional spouse, I found solace in knowing that my own spouse was equally supportive. My entire in-law family rallied behind me in my caregiving efforts, always inquiring about my father's well-being whenever I visited to assist him. Their genuine concern never failed to touch my heart. Yet I couldn't shake the feeling that perhaps I had misjudged them. One day, as I left home to tend to my father, I realized I had forgotten my wallet upon reaching the station. Frustrated with my own absent-mindedness, I returned home. On days when I went to care for my father, my in-laws would often lend a hand with household chores, so I anticipated they might find my blunder amusing. As I re-entered the house to retrieve my wallet, I overheard a conversation between James and my in-laws in the living room. "Are we certain Karen's father isn't about to kick the bucket? I'm tired of this waiting game." "Huh?" Pausing mid-step, I questioned whether my ears deceived me. Leaning closer to the living room door, I caught their conversation with clarity. "Speaking of which, how much does Karen stand to inherit once her father bites the dust? We've been playing nice, but it only makes sense if we're getting a hefty chunk. Her old man's loaded, you know. When he croaks, she's set to rake in a fortune. I bet it's over 100 mil, right? Geez, that's insane. I'm counting down the days. Once her old man kicks it, I'm hoping she'll whisk me off on a vacation." "That sounds lovely. Maybe I'll put in a request for a car." "James, what about you?" "You know, I've been eyeing the top-of-the-line gaming rig for ages. I'm wondering if I can drop a hint for Karen to get me one." Their conversation bubbled with excitement, unaware of the storm raging behind the door. I clutched my wallet tightly, channeling all my emotions into that grip. Anger, frustration, and sadness churned within me, a turbulent whirlpool of thoughts and feelings. Careful not to disturb James and his family in the living room, I slipped out of the house, my mind still reeling. Their sudden kindness felt suspicious, tinged with the scent of greed. My father's inheritance loomed large, a tempting prize for those with less than honorable intentions. But I couldn't bear to entertain the notion that my in-laws were eagerly awaiting his demise. Lost in my turmoil, I found myself sitting on a bench at the local station near my parents' home, the echoes of James and his family's laughter haunting my thoughts. "I won't forgive them. Never," I muttered under my breath, seething with anger. I vowed to exact revenge on James and his conniving family who valued my father, the man who raised me with love, solely for his wealth. Pretending ignorance of their callous conversation, I played along, maintaining my usual polite facade and expressing gratitude for their concern about my father's health. Determined to turn the tables, I resolved to exploit James and my avaricious in-laws for all they were worth. I extended my visits. I dedicated myself to caring for my father while unceremoniously delegating household chores to my in-laws. My money-hungry in-laws readily complied with any requests I made. I noticed the subtle tightening of their faces and James' expression at times, but I paid it no mind. A year passed, and my father's condition deteriorated further. Though the doctor assured me it wasn't urgent, I couldn't shake off a sense of relief. However, when I shared the news of my father's declining health with James and my in-laws, their barely concealed grins betrayed their true intentions. It was the moment they had been waiting for. With resolve, I handed them the divorce papers. "Thank you for all your assistance. Please let's part ways." As I made my declaration, James and my in-laws were stunned into silence, but I remained composed as I delivered my prepared speech. "So, James, mother-in-law, father-in-law, it's clear you were eyeing my father's inheritance, weren't you? I heard everything. Mother-in-law dreaming of vacations, father-in-law longing for a new car, and James craving that gaming computer, am I right? I can't stay with people eagerly anticipating my father's demise." The expressions you wore just now were repulsive. It was as if I could see straight through to your crass desires for money upon my father's passing. My words seemed to strike fear into them, their faces frozen in shock. My in-laws remained motionless, while James, clutching the divorce papers, was at a loss for words, his mouth opening and closing in disbelief. It was clear I had no place in this household any longer. "You can send the divorce papers by mail, but if you don't, I'll hire a lawyer. Please ensure it's done within a week," I informed James, my voice steady. After collecting the luggage I had prepared earlier, I exited our home. As the train gently rocked me on my journey back to my parents' house, I felt a sense of calm envelop me. Upon my arrival, my parents greeted me warmly. Having confided in my mother about the situation, she enveloped me in a comforting embrace, offering words of encouragement. It was a moment of vulnerability I hadn't experienced since I'd become an adult. The following day, James and my in-laws arrived at my parents' home. Choosing to remain hidden, I observed from afar. When my mother opened the front door, I watched as James and my in-laws knelt before her. "We apologize. We want to apologize to Karen. It seems there's been a misunderstanding. Please allow us to apologize to her properly," they pleaded. "Misunderstanding? My daughter overheard your conversation. It seems you've been eyeing my husband's inheritance. I don't want any association with people like that," my mother declared, her tone sharp and final. Despite her dismissal, James persisted, pleading to see me. "I can't allow it. Karen doesn't want to see you. She doesn't seek apologies. She wants those divorce papers filled out. Have you done it? Hand them over," my mother demanded. "Please, just one more chance," James pleaded, desperation creeping into his voice. As James cried out, the sound of a cane tapping echoed from within the house. Turning to look, I saw my father, leaning on his cane with my sister-in-law's support. "Father-in-law?" James's mouth fell open at the sight of my father, whom he had only heard about. Holding up a whiteboard, my father conveyed a powerful message. "I won't surrender my daughter to someone who can't bring her happiness. Grant her wish and proceed with the divorce." The message, penned with resolve, seemed to strike a chord with James and my in-laws more than any other words spoken. It was evident they realized further debate was futile. Slowly, James rose to his feet, followed by my in-laws. "I've completed the divorce papers. Here they are," James announced, handing the documents to my mother. He assured her he would inform me once he had filed them with the city hall. With that, my mother bid them farewell. Emerging from my hiding place, I expressed my gratitude. "Thank you, Mom and Dad." My mother responded with a gentle smile, while my father let out a hearty laugh and wrote a message on the whiteboard. "A father's duty is to protect his daughter until the end." Reading those words on the whiteboard, tears welled up in my eyes. Despite the paralysis on his left side, my father's kindness and love remained unchanged. I had mistakenly believed that he was no longer the father I knew, but it couldn't have been more wrong. He was still the same dependable father who always prioritized my well-being. "Dad, I wish for you to live a long, happy life," I whispered, my voice choked with emotion. With tears streaming down my face, I expressed my wish to him, and he responded with a beaming grin. Since then, James has returned to his parents' home, seemingly leading a quiet life with them. As for me, I've adapted to the routine of caring for my father while juggling work commitments. It's a hectic life, but I remember how my father always made time to play with my brother and me when we were young. With that memory in mind, neither my brother nor I feel burdened by caring for him, no matter how busy we become. Despite being partially bedridden and having lost weight, my father's spirit remains unchanged. His infectious laughter and love for dad jokes continue to brighten our days. My sister-in-law often remarks how caring for my playful father brings her joy, allowing us to maintain a peaceful existence. Hi, I'm Marie, and I'm 30 years old. I've been married to my husband, Sam, for 4 years. We really wanted to have kids right after we got married, but it just didn't happen for us. The doctors checked me out, and everything seemed fine, but Sam wasn't keen on getting checked himself. So we kind of gave up trying for a baby. Sometimes I wondered what might happen if Sam went for tests and treatment, but I realized that having a child isn't the only path to happiness. I never pushed him to go to the doctor. I work as an architect at a construction company, and I love what I do. My salary is good, and I find my job really fulfilling. So I started thinking that not having kids might be okay. Sam works for the government, and while he earns less than me, his job is stable. We have a great life together. We enjoy doing things we love, eating tasty food, and going on trips every now and then. That's Sally, my sister, calling me from outside the house with her sweet, pleading voice again. It's way too early for anyone to be dropping by, especially on a weekday. With a sigh, I made my way to the front door. Can you stop coming over so early? I'm sorry, but I've got something going on. Can you take care of Annie again? I looked after her just the other day, remember? Please, I need your help. Sally, who's 3 years younger than me, became a mom to Annie 4 years ago through a sudden marriage that didn't last long. Now she's raising Annie on her own. Lately, she's been relying on me to babysit several times a week for even the smallest reasons. It's urgent. I had no other choice, right? I have work too, but you're working from home, Marie. Just let her nap next to you, please, she asked, already placing Annie's things at the door as if it's already decided. Feeling unable to say no, I sighed and agreed to watch my niece. Thanks, I'll pick her up later, Sally said happily as she left. She was dressed up, wearing a short skirt. I wondered what she was up to. Watching her walk away in her high heels, I felt a mix of emotions. My 4-year-old niece is such a calm and easy child to care for. Sometimes she gets a bit teary, but her adorable smile makes everything better. Even though I thought having kids wasn't in the cards for us, spending time with her made me realize just how precious little ones can be. It saddens me to see her mom, my sister Sally, leaving her with me so often. I've mentioned to Sally that it's not ideal to leave her daughter so frequently, but I'm still happy to look after my niece. When Sally came to pick her up later that evening, she didn't even offer an apology. She just took her daughter and left in a hurry. Then my husband arrived home, and Sally left her child with us again for the day. I tried to talk to my husband about my day, but he seemed disinterested and barely responded. I understand that being a single mom is tough for Sally, but I also feel like my husband should be more supportive. He brushed off the conversation and went to take a shower. That's when I noticed his phone buzzing on the table, something he usually never leaves unattended. Curious, I glanced at the screen and saw that the caller was Sally. Confused, I wondered why she would be calling him. Before I could think too much about it, my husband returned and quickly grabbed his phone, rushing off to the bathroom. I tried to brush it off, but the message from Sally lingered in my mind. I need to see you urgently. Was Sally messaging my husband? Could he be cheating on me? These thoughts raced through my mind, but I couldn't find any solid answers. Since then, I never had another opportunity to check his phone. I'm feeling a bit peckish. Oh, sorry, sweetheart, I got distracted, I said as I lifted my niece into my arms. She looked up at me with those innocent eyes, melting my heart. If Sally is really having an affair with my husband, it means she's putting her desires ahead of her own child. How could she abandon such an adorable little girl? If my suspicions are true, I don't know if I could ever forgive either Sally or my husband. Here are the findings from the investigation. Thank you, I said, trying to steady my voice as I accepted the report from the detective agency I had hired. The results confirmed my worst fears. My husband was indeed having an affair. It hit me like a ton of bricks, but I managed to hold back my tears. I had mentally prepared myself for this moment. As it turned out, my husband and Sally were deeply involved in this affair. It wasn't just a one-time mistake or a brief lapse in judgment. They had been meeting several times a week, going to great lengths to cover their tracks. Looking back, I recalled how my husband, typically punctual and returning home from his government job, suddenly started working late on the days Sally brought my niece over. He always had some excuse ready to defend Sally's actions when she left her child with us. Why hadn't I noticed these patterns before? They both often came home at the same time, but I never connected the dots until now. Receiving the report, I was overwhelmed with uncertainty about what steps to take next. Should I confide in my parents or confront both of them? But before anything else, my niece came to mind. You're having an affair, aren't you? I confronted my husband abruptly, catching him off guard. What? No, what are you talking about? Don't spout nonsense, he retorted, clearly taken aback by my accusation. You're cheating with Sally, aren't you? I pressed, my certainty leaving him visibly flustered, his eyes darting around as if searching for an escape from the truth. Too late, I already know everything. Let's get a divorce, I declared firmly, his face flushed with anger at being labeled as the lowest of the low. But as I confronted the reality of my husband's affair with Sally, a cold numbness overtook me. I felt indifferent, detached from the situation. Both Sally and my husband seemed despicable for their betrayal. Despite being entitled to compensation in a divorce court, I couldn't bear the thought of my niece suffering. So I made the decision not to pursue compensation from Sally and to keep the affair a secret from our parents. Let me think about it. It's all so sudden, my husband replied, trying to regain his composure. Reluctantly, I agreed to give him time to process everything. Little did I know, it was a mistake. The next day, he didn't return home at his usual time. I waited anxiously, wondering if he and Sally were scheming something together. Despite my concerns, I chose to wait without reaching out to him. I was startled by the sound of a child crying nearby. Stepping outside, I couldn't believe what I saw. Annie, my niece, wrapped in a blanket, stood alone in front of my house, looking lost. My heart sank as I watched Sally and my husband speed away in their car. I hesitated for a moment, torn between chasing after them and staying with Annie, who was crying inconsolably. In the end, I couldn't leave her behind, so I stayed and watched their car disappear into the distance. How could they abandon a child like that? What if something terrible had happened to Annie while they were gone? The mere thought sent chills down my spine, filling me with anger towards the two people who could so callously neglect their responsibilities. They weren't human, they were monsters. As I lifted Annie into my arms, I noticed several papers bundled up with her blanket. Among them were divorce papers with my husband's signature and letters from both him and Sally. They apologized for their actions, expressing their love for each other and their desire to be together. They left Annie in my care. Reading those words filled me with a tumult of emotions, frustration, anger, and a profound sense of betrayal. Unable to contain my feelings any longer, I broke down in tears, overwhelmed by the sudden and drastic turn of events. I decided to confide in my parents about everything that had unfolded, including Annie being abandoned. They rushed over as soon as they could. Through tears, I showed them the evidence of Sally and my husband's affair, explaining the whole situation. Mom hugged me tightly, offering comfort, while Dad's hands trembled with anger. "What's your plan now?" Dad asked, his voice tense with emotion. "I'm filing for divorce," I replied firmly. "Good, that's the right decision. We'll need to discuss this with your husband's parents as well," Dad insisted. My parents were determined to sever ties with Sally. They made it clear that even if she sought refuge with them, they wouldn't offer any help. "Annie is our precious granddaughter. We'll take care of her," Dad declared, his gaze resting on Annie, who was peacefully sleeping. Mom's eyes were downcast, tears welling up. "No, I'll take care of her," I asserted, my decision unwavering. "You don't have to do that. Consider what they've done." "You don't owe them anything," Mom urged, concerned that I might be swayed by Sally and my husband's letters. But my resolve was firm. "Annie is incredibly dear to me. I see her as my own child. I want to adopt her," I explained. My parents seemed troubled but respected my decision. They assured me of their support and urged me to consult them whenever needed, which brought me some comfort. The next day, I decided to inquire about my husband's whereabouts at his workplace, only to discover that he had already resigned. I was certain he had vanished without a trace. When I checked our bank account, it was wiped clean. I couldn't help but be impressed by how swiftly he had managed to empty it all in just one day. However, only a small portion of the money, which was in an account my husband had easy access to, had been withdrawn. The rest of our savings were safely tucked away in another account. I had made the decision to transfer the funds as a precaution, and now I was grateful for that foresight. It was a small move on my part, but it saved us from financial ruin. I also reached out to Sally's ex-husband, hoping he might want to be involved in his daughter's life, but he showed no interest. It pained me to think about my niece's situation, but I was determined to give her all the love and care she deserved. After finalizing my divorce, I officially adopted my niece. Together, we embarked on a fresh start in a new location. Life presented its challenges, but it was also filled with joy. My niece taught me the highs and lows of parenthood, and as the years went by, I cherished every moment, especially the day she called me Mom for the first time. Despite the hardships we faced, the love I felt for my daughter gave me strength to persevere. Balancing work and parenting, a decade flew by in the blink of an eye. Then on the day my daughter turned 14, I received an unexpected call on my cell phone. "Mom, there's a call for you," my daughter called from the other room. "Okay," I replied, glancing at the screen, which displayed only a phone number. I wondered who could be calling. Curiosity piqued, I answered, and a familiar voice greeted me from the other end. "Hi Marie, it's Sally. It's been a while." It was Sally. Even after all these years, she spoke as if nothing had changed. Her casual tone made their sudden reappearance feel surreal. "Mom, are you okay?" my daughter asked, concern evident in her voice. "Yes, I'll handle it, but you should stay back. Can you call Grandma and let her know Sally's here? Phil, do you understand?" I instructed my daughter, sensing the seriousness of the situation. She nodded firmly and quickly made the call to my mom. As she did, I closed the door to the living room, preparing myself for what was to come, and then opened the front door to confront Sally. "I knew you were here. This isn't acceptable. You're disturbing the neighbors," I stated firmly as I faced Sally, who stood on my doorstep. "Well, you took forever to answer the door. Isn't that right?" Sally retorted casually. "It's been too long." Behind Sally, my ex-husband stood awkwardly, a surprise I hadn't anticipated. The two of them, who I hadn't seen in a decade, looked different. My ex-husband appeared worn out, while Sally seemed to be trying to maintain a youthful appearance but instead appeared older than her years. "I'm not comfortable with this sudden visit. Please leave. I came for my daughter. Is she here?" I demanded. "Stop. You're not coming in," I interrupted firmly. "Why? She's my daughter. If you don't let us in, I'll have to call the police." "This is trespassing," Sally argued. "What?" Sally's irritation at my firm refusal was evident as she raised her voice towards the house. "Hey Annie, you're in there, right? Stop this nonsense. Why are you interfering? Do you really think you're her real mom, Marie? You're nothing but a fraud. I'm the one who carried her in my womb and gave birth to her. A real mom is obviously superior." I wanted to retort to remind Sally of her decade-long absence and abandonment of Annie, but I hesitated, considering that my daughter might still harbor some curiosity about her biological mother. With that in mind, I found myself at a loss for words. Seeing my hesitation, Sally laughed triumphantly and pushed past me, striding into the house. "Annie, Mom." "Ha, you've grown up. I'm your real mom," Sally declared. Confused by the sudden intrusion, my daughter looked at Sally with a mix of fear and uncertainty. Sensing my daughter's unease, Sally's expression twisted into one of displeasure. "Has this woman been filling your head with lies about me? It's all untrue. She's the one who took you from me and pretended to be your mom. I'm your real mother," Sally insisted, her gaze shifting from me to my daughter. My daughter, angered by Sally's attitude, exclaimed, "Liar." "Yes, your aunt is the real liar, not me," Sally retorted. "What?" My daughter pointed directly at Sally, stunning both of us with her unexpected outburst. "Do you know how old I am? I'm almost 16, not 15. My mom raised me all these years, but she never told me about you. Still, I remember a little about you." Both Sally and I were speechless as my daughter continued, "I remember you yelling at me, not giving me food." "What? I never did such a thing," Sally denied vehemently. "You're not my mom. I have only one mom, not the one who gave birth to me, but the one who cared for and loved me. That's this mom," my daughter declared, pointing at me with conviction. My daughter gripped my sleeve tightly, and a surge of emotion overwhelmed me, threatening to spill tears. "What?" Sally exclaimed in frustration, her hand lifting as if to strike. Instinctively, I moved to shield my daughter, but Sally's movement abruptly halted. "Dad, it's you." My husband had returned without my notice, and he swiftly intervened, grasping Sally's arm and preventing any harm. Informed of the situation, he understood that Sally was the aggressor, while my ex-husband stood bewildered nearby, watching with a sharp gaze. "Are you both all right?" my husband asked calmly, his reassuring presence bringing a sense of relief to my daughter and me. "Yes," we both replied, reassured by the steadiness in his eyes. "You remarried?" My ex-husband, who had failed to intervene in Sally's violence, was taken aback. That's none of your concern, I responded firmly. How dare you remarry without me? You left me and vanished after the divorce, remember? My ex-husband's accusatory tone was met with stern gazes from both my husband and me, leaving him speechless. What? Marie remarried? Living in this grand house with a husband? This is absurd. I took everything from her. Why does she seem happy? Sally's voice cracked as she screamed, her disheveled hair adding to her erratic appearance. These people have treated Mom horribly. My mom is only my mom. My typically reserved daughter passionately defended me. It's all right. Stay here with Mom. Your parents are here too. We'll sort this out, my husband assured us, his gentle touch steadying me as I realized I was trembling uncontrollably. My husband escorted Sally and my ex-husband outside, their voices filled with nonsensical shouts. Mom, are you okay? My daughter's concern was evident in her voice. I'm sorry. I should have talked to you. I apologize, feeling a pang of regret. No, it's okay. I never told you either. I remembered my biological parents and thought you might be disappointed. If only I had done the right thing, I wouldn't have made you feel so insecure, my daughter admitted, her words heavy with remorse. I know you kept silent thinking of me. Me? I replied, tears streaming down my face as we embraced each other tightly. Fear, relief, and happiness mingled together as we cried together, the weight of the recent events finally released. Sally and my ex-husband were sternly reprimanded by my husband and parents for their unreasonable behavior. Despite their persistent attempts to reclaim my daughter, their motives were purely self-serving. My daughter's biological father, Sally's ex-husband, had recently passed away, leaving behind a significant inheritance for Annie, his legitimate daughter. Sally and my ex-husband sought to gain control of my daughter in pursuit of this inheritance. Sally, desperate for money, sought refuge at her parents' home, only to be turned away and ostracized. Though my daughter discovered the truth in a painful manner, she bravely accepted it and forged ahead. With the unwavering support of my loving daughter and devoted husband, I realized that family goes beyond blood ties. Our bond is rooted in love and resilience, surpassing any genetic connection. As I prepared breakfast with my daughter on a Sunday morning, I couldn't help but feel overwhelmed with gratitude for our happiness and the strength of our family bond. My name is Alice, and I'm 28 years old. I work with kids. I recently got engaged to my boyfriend Tom. This is my first time visiting his parents' house. Tom went to a really good university and has a cool job at a big company. He's super smart and everyone respects him at work. I've always looked up to him. His dad seems happy about us getting married and even mentioned how they've never had a daughter and his wife will be excited. But I noticed that Tom's mom, who was sitting next to him, didn't seem too happy. It's been bothering me. She looked like she was mad, her face all scrunched up. Then out of nowhere, she asks, I heard you didn't finish high school, is that true? Our Tom is top-notch, graduated from a big-shot university. Do you really think I'd be okay with him marrying someone like you? Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. Mom, that's really uncalled for. You're being mean to Alice, I said, defending my fiancé. Yeah, Mom, what matters is how we feel about each other, Tom chimed in. Both Tom and his dad had my back, but it only seemed to make her angrier. Isn't it normal for a mom to care about who her son is marrying? Kids take after their moms, right? I want the best for my family, she argued, not backing down. It seemed like she wasn't going to accept me, a high school dropout, because she wanted the best for her kids. Some people really care about what degrees you have, and parents often value education a lot. It felt really disheartening to be judged just because I didn't finish high school. But there's more to my story. I didn't drop out for no reason. After my dad died in a car crash, my mom struggled to take care of me and my twin sister, Emma. I had to step up and start working after middle school to help out. Now, I'm going to night school to get my diploma. I'm also saving up money, and I might even go to college someday. Tom is totally on board with this plan and has offered to pitch in for my college expenses. He understands where I'm coming from, and he's always been supportive. It's one of the reasons I fell for him. But it seems like my future mother-in-law isn't too happy about it. Tom doesn't have any siblings, so we'll be moving in with his parents eventually. I'm a bit anxious about how that's going to work out. A while later, I moved into their house with only a month left until our wedding. As the big day got closer, I had to make frequent trips to the venue for final checks, and arrange hotels for our out-of-town guests. Between work, school, and wedding planning, I was swamped. But my mother-in-law didn't seem too happy with how I was handling things. Today, as I was putting on makeup to go to the venue, she suddenly exclaimed, "Oh my, what are you wearing?" She couldn't help commenting on my outfit. "I'm getting ready to go to the venue, so I wanted to look nice," I explained. Whether she was unhappy with me dressing up for the occasion or just looking for an excuse to criticize me, I couldn't tell. You say you're going to the venue, but you're dressed like that just to catch some attention, aren't you? You should be more careful," she remarked. She just assumed I was meeting up with a guy instead of going to the venue. I was stunned. I assured her I was meeting Tom at the venue and suggested she ask him if she had doubts. But she wouldn't listen and insisted I was meeting someone else. Then, out of nowhere, she messed up my carefully styled hair. "What are you doing, Mom? I spent ages on my hair. Now it's ruined," I protested. With my hair all messy, I couldn't leave like that, so I had to fix it. But instead of apologizing, she said, "Don't bother fixing it. This messy look suits a dropout like you. You should wear it like this for the wedding." I was already running late, so I quickly fixed my hair and headed to the venue, where Tom was waiting. He noticed something was off with me, but I didn't want to bring up what happened with his mom before discussing the ceremony, so I kept quiet about what happened with Tom for now. Then, as the wedding day drew closer, my mother-in-law surprised us with a suggestion. "Hey, doesn't Alice's mom live far away? It must be hard for her to come and stay in a hotel. Why not have her stay with us?" Tom and I were taken aback by her sudden offer. It seemed like a good idea to save money on hotel bills and help our families bond. Tom thought I should talk to my mom about it, so I did. My mom was thrilled with the idea, and we decided to bring my twin sister, Emma, along too. At first, I thought my mother-in-law was being kind, but I had no idea what she would do next. The day before the wedding, my mom and sister arrived to stay at my in-laws' house. Seeing my mom and sister, who I hadn't seen in ages, brought me so much joy. My bond with my sister is super tight, and we were thrilled to be together again. We decided to share a room for the night. Emma, who had a bit to drink, was out like a light as soon as she hit the pillow. "Once she's out, I chuckled to myself. Just as I was thinking of hitting the hay too, I heard the door creak open. Wondering who it could be, I heard a loud buzzing noise and the sound of hair being shaved. "Now you won't be showing up at the ceremony tomorrow, will you? No me for hair on a dropout like you," my mother-in-law said. I was stunned. I quickly flipped on the lights and exclaimed, "Mother-in-law, what on earth are you doing?" The person in the bed suddenly sat up, surprising us both. "Huh? Mother-in-law, you've got the wrong person. I'm Alice," I clarified, realizing she mistook me for Emma. "I'm sorry, Mom, but it's not my hair. Emma and I are twins, and we look really similar," I clarified. But it wasn't me who got her hair shaved. It was my sister, Emma. "What? No way. Why didn't it happen to Alice?" My mother-in-law was clearly shocked, but Emma, who had a bit too much to drink, was fast asleep. When she wakes up and sees her shaved head in the morning, she'll definitely be furious. Emma's got a fiery temper, so it's pretty obvious she'll be mad as heck. "What are you going to do now, Mom?" "I can't cover for you," I admitted, feeling guilty. Maybe my mother-in-law left the room looking pale. The next morning, when Emma saw herself in the mirror and realized she was bald, she was both shocked and furious. Our mom, who was there, couldn't hold back her tears, and Tom looked really upset. This is awful. Who could have done such a thing? So I spilled the beans about what happened the previous day in front of everyone. I wondered how my mother-in-law would react when she woke up, but she wasn't around. My father-in-law told me she had mentioned going for an early morning walk and hadn't come back yet. I started to worry that she might have left, so I decided to tell our family everything and began looking for her. About 30 minutes later, a relative called to say they found her at a nearby convenience store, and my father-in-law went to get her. When she got back home, seemingly unaware of the search, she immediately started making excuses. "I didn't do anything wrong. It's all Alice's fault. She used the clippers herself and shaved Emma's hair while she was sleeping," she claimed, much to my surprise. My mother-in-law was trying to blame me for everything, which left me completely stunned. I couldn't hold back and retorted, "That's absurd. I didn't do anything wrong. Weren't you the one who entered the room yesterday? It's unbelievable that you're still lying." but she was adamant about not admitting her mistake. Then my father-in-law seemed to recall something and went outside, returning with something in his hand. Alice, could this be the clipper? As I looked at the clipper he held, it was unmistakably the one my mother-in-law used to shave off Emma's hair last night. That's it. That's the clipper. But where was it? It turned out that the clipper originally belonged to my father-in-law, who always cared about his appearance and carried grooming tools with him. When they checked the car, where he kept his grooming tools, they found it had been rummaged through and the clipper was missing. I always leave my car keys in the bedroom. If there's brown hair in this clipper, then it's clear your mom is the culprit, he stated as he began to disassemble the clipper. The clipper contained unmistakable brown hair, clearly from Emma. She must have hurriedly left in the dark and didn't properly clean up the hair, my mother-in-law admitted, dropping to her knees as she noticed the evidence. Alice, it's all your fault. You, a dropout with no money, tricked intelligent Tom. I wanted you out of Tom's life at any cost, she'd accused, leaving me feeling disgusted by her selfishness. Emma, who was most affected by her actions, was furious. I don't care about your excuses. What are you going to do about this? I can't go to the wedding like this, she demanded. Upon hearing Emma's distress, my father-in-law made a quick call. Luckily, a friend who was a hairstylist agreed to come over immediately with a wig. While this would temporarily solve Emma's hair dilemma, we couldn't just ignore what my mother-in-law had done. 30 minutes later, father-in-law's friend arrived with the wig, and Emma's hair looked lovely again. Initially, father-in-law contemplated shaving my mother-in-law's hair like he did with Emma, but he decided it wouldn't provide a sense of closure. Instead, he chose to confront my mother-in-law's wrongdoing in front of everyone. Among the guests invited were the landlords to whom my mother-in-law's parents had been indebted for generations. They had a good rapport with father-in-law, and news of this incident would undoubtedly affect my mother-in-law's parents' living situation. You see, these landlords, who were close friends of my in-laws, had been giving them a discounted rent. However, upon learning about my mother-in-law's actions, the landlord, known for his integrity, would likely revert the rent to its original rate or even consider eviction. My mother-in-law's parents, who are financially strained, would then have no choice but to seek refuge with my mother-in-law. However, Tom had previously mentioned that my mother-in-law didn't have a good relationship with her parents and wouldn't be willing to assist them. For my mother-in-law, having her parents move in would be the start of a living nightmare. Wait, please. I'll be in deep trouble if you do that. I'm sorry, it was all my fault, she pleaded. I made a terrible mistake, and I'm deeply sorry, Emma. I'll compensate you for the damage. Please forgive me, my mother-in-law pleaded, repeatedly apologizing as she pressed her forehead against the floor. However, despite her apologies, Emma's hair couldn't magically grow back. After discussing it, we decided that my father-in-law and Tom would disclose my mother-in-law's actions. Emma had already agreed to this. Initially, my mother-in-law refused to attend the wedding and attempted to flee, but Emma and Tom prevented her from escaping. When we arrived at the venue, relatives who had been informed of the situation through messages approached us, looking extremely concerned. In front of our relatives, we exposed my mother-in-law's wrongdoing, and Emma bravely removed her wig to reveal her bald head. Everyone was shocked by Emma's appearance, especially the women, who expressed disbelief. For a woman, hair is often considered vital, so the sudden loss due to shaving was particularly distressing. Some people couldn't help but shed tears as they thought of Emma's ordeal. As expected, the landlord confronted my mother-in-law, asking if the accusations were true. Initially, she tried to deny it, but under pressure from my father-in-law, she eventually admitted her wrongdoing. The landlord, visibly angry, faced criticism from the women present as well. Throughout the ceremony, my usually spirited mother-in-law remained downcast, a stark contrast to her usual self. Despite this, the wedding proceeded smoothly, and we were blessed by the well wishes of many attendees. However, it became clear that we could no longer reside with my mother-in-law in that house. Therefore, we made the decision to move into our own apartment and start our life as a couple. Although my mother-in-law panicked at the thought of us leaving, pleading with us not to go, we knew we couldn't continue living with her. My father-in-law shared the same sentiment. He informed my mother-in-law that he intended to divorce her and asked her to vacate the premises. Upon hearing this, my mother-in-law turned pale and clung to him, begging for reconsideration. She expressed concerns about where she would live, given her strained relationship with her own parents. She appeared visibly distressed, as if on the verge of collapsing. However, despite her pleas, we prioritized Emma's well-being. The fact that my own hair had been shaved off while I slept, mistaken for Emma, was a jarring realization. Despite my mother-in-law's persistent attempts to persuade us otherwise, my father-in-law contacted her parents and she reluctantly agreed to leave the house. Currently, my mother-in-law is residing with her estranged parents, where she appears to be tending to their needs. However, it seems her parents possess challenging personalities and my mother-in-law is feeling overwhelmed by their demands. Despite reaching out to us multiple times, expressing her desire for a fresh start, we have no intention of reconciling with her, so we've chosen to block her calls. Presently, my husband and I are enjoying a happy life alongside my father-in-law in his home. Recognizing that the house was quite outdated, we embarked on a renovation project together. My father-in-law constructed his dream study, my husband created a space to showcase his model figures, and I focused on installing a modern, state-of-the-art kitchen. Naturally, we also prepared a room for our future child, and now the three of us are residing comfortably. Emma's hair, which was shaved during the ordeal, has since grown into a stylish short haircut, receiving praise from her friends as a positive transformation. She often jokes about the incident with her friends, which stirs up conflicting emotions for me. Nonetheless, Emma occasionally visits our family home for sleepovers, which I eagerly anticipate. While challenges may arise in the future, I am confident that with our collective efforts, we can overcome them together. Leave, you useless old ladies who can't even clean properly. My husband and I, who were living with our eldest son and his wife, were giving $3,000 to help with expenses every month. But his wife would often insult us with hurtful words and make life difficult for us. We were fed up and angry. We didn't want anything to do with her anymore and decided to get back at her someday. My name is Susie. I'm 62 years old and work part-time while also taking care of our home. I live with my husband David, who is the same age as me. David works in an office and is a kind and serious man, so we have a stable income and rarely argue. Our son, Lawrence, is 32 years old. He's just like his dad, kind-hearted and responsible. After finishing university, he got a job at a private company and is working hard. 2 years ago, he married a woman named Emily, whom he met at work. However, it turned out that Emily was actually a very mean person. When we first met her, she appeared to be serious and nice. Lawrence assured us that she was hardworking at her job and had a good relationship with her bosses. Emily is 6 years younger than Lawrence, and although we weren't sure if they would get along, we trusted Lawrence's judgment. After they got married, Lawrence and Emily moved into their own apartment. Emily promised to take care of all the household chores so Lawrence could focus on his work. Lawrence seemed appreciative of her help. He often said, "Thanks to Emily taking care of everything at home, I can concentrate on my job." I'm grateful. My husband and I believed that our son had chosen a good wife. But Emily's true nature began to emerge gradually. We had a family gathering for New Year's, and when I saw Emily, I didn't even recognize her at first. She looked completely different. The last time I saw her, she had black hair and wore minimal makeup, appearing reserved. But now, she had transformed into a bold woman with pink hair, wearing loud bracelets on her wrists. She seemed like a whole different person. My husband, David, and the rest of our family were surprised by Emily's drastic change. Lawrence tried to smooth things over. "I'm sorry if this caught you off guard." I was also surprised when I came home from work one day to find Emily like this. But she manages the household well, and we don't have any problems. Plus, Emily is a full-time homemaker. Can we overlook this? After hearing Lawrence's explanation, I felt a weight lifted off my shoulders. Well, if Lawrence is fine with it, then so am I. I was just taken aback by how different Emily looks now. It's not fair to judge someone solely based on appearances, and it's not my place to complain. My family seemed to agree with my sentiment. Later, we all had a good time drinking together until Emily caused a scene. She got extremely drunk and started hurling insults at everyone around her. "You dare to defy me?" I once took down 3 classmates at once back in middle school. It became evident that she had a tendency to become aggressive when intoxicated. She even directed hurtful words at me and David, yelling, "Stop clinging onto life needlessly, you old pests. Nobody is pleased that you're still alive." Her words cut deep. There's a limit to what's acceptable, even under the influence of alcohol. David looked furious, and Lawrence was visibly shocked. "Hey, even for a drunken conversation, you've crossed the line. Apologize." However, Emily didn't even listen to Lawrence. "You dump all the chores on me, then have the guts to lecture me, a weakling like you. I could take you down in a heartbeat." Emily kept on with her verbal assault, causing chaos and trouble for everyone around. Eventually, she passed out from the alcohol and the tension eased, but the mood remained sour. Everyone was furious with Emily. Then one of the relatives brought up Emily's earlier claim about defeating classmates. "Was she a troublemaker in the past?" they asked. "No," Lawrence replied. "Emily graduated from a public university. I always thought she was a serious person." But the relative remained doubtful. "Do we have any proof she's been on the straight and narrow? Maybe we should dig into Emily's past to see what kind of person she really is." I agreed with the idea. "It might be worth looking into," I said. Lawrence promised to investigate further. Since Emily had no living parents and few ties to her relatives, he decided to hire a private investigator. The investigation uncovered that Emily had been quite rebellious during her middle school years and even led a group of troublemakers. She was so infamous that even the local troublemakers followed her lead since she was in 9th grade. Concerned about her future, Emily started to put on a more serious facade. Despite graduating from a public university, she remained connected with her rowdy group of friends. Even now, when Lawrence was at work, Emily would invite these troublesome friends over, causing disturbances that annoyed the neighbors. It became clear that Emily was hiding her true nature. She was indeed a troublemaker. Frustrated by this behavior, Lawrence brought up the idea of divorce. However, Emily reacted with tears and pleading. "I'm sorry. I'll change and be more serious. Please forgive me. I need you, Lawrence. Please don't leave me." She even reverted to her old appearance and deleted her friends' contacts from her phone right in front of Lawrence. She apologized to the relatives she had upset during the New Year's gathering and repeatedly called me to apologize. Seeing her efforts, Lawrence began to reconsider his decision. As a result, Lawrence and Emily decided not to divorce and opted to continue their married life. Since Lawrence was the one married to Emily, my husband, and I felt it wasn't our place to interfere too much. So we respected Lawrence's decision. When I saw Emily again at the family summer gathering, she seemed to have become a more serious person, and I hoped things would be fine from then on. However, one day while I was at my part-time job, I strained my back while lifting a heavy object. The pain was so severe that I couldn't move. My colleagues rushed me to the hospital, where I was diagnosed with a significant back strain and advised to rest. When I called Lawrence to tell him about it, he suggested something unexpected. "Why don't you come and live with us? Both Emily and I, along with Dad, could take care of you. At your age, incidents like these might happen more often, and it would be better if we were there to help." As I pondered the idea, it seemed like a sensible solution. Once my back pain had subsided, my husband, Lawrence, Emily, and I sat down and discussed the idea of living together. We all agreed it made sense, especially considering our spacious single-family home. With no space issues, Lawrence and Emily moved in with us, and we began our shared living arrangement. Initially, everything went smoothly. Emily took on half of the household chores, which lightened my load significantly. My husband and I contributed financially, providing around $3,000 each month to cover expenses. Although my part-time job limited my financial contribution, I wanted to ease the financial strain on Lawrence and Emily as much as possible. However, Emily's behavior started to change gradually. She began claiming she wasn't feeling well and started pushing more of the household responsibilities onto me. Initially, I believed her and took on the extra chores, but I soon noticed inconsistencies. She appeared perfectly healthy, eating hearty meals and even going out for leisure activities all day. Feeling perplexed, I confronted Emily gently, expressing my concerns. "I hate to question this, but are you truly unwell? You seem energetic and spend a lot of time outside." Emily's response was a fierce glare. "Why are you doubting me?" she snapped. "If you keep this up, I'll give you a piece of my mind." I was taken aback by her coarse language. It was evident she felt no remorse. She was likely only pretending to change to avoid losing Lawrence. Emily, sensing my shock, scoffed, "Are you scared, Aria?" "Well, get used to it. I've played the quiet girl for too long. It's time for me to be myself." "You're aware of the consequences if you continue, right, Emily?" It seemed Emily had used intimidation tactics before, perhaps during her school days. This behavior had carried over into adulthood, where she could manipulate others to get her way. While I couldn't deny feeling afraid of Emily, I hadn't lived 62 years to be pushed around. Holding my ground, I warned her sternly, "If your behavior crosses the line, it could be considered a crime, you know? I'm not here to obey your orders like a robot. If you push too far, I won't hesitate to involve the authorities." Emily appeared surprised by my unexpected response, but she quickly fired back, "Shut up, old woman. I'll never forgive you." Her outburst startled David and Lawrence, who rushed to see what was happening. They were both home since it was their day off. After briefly explaining the situation, David and Lawrence frowned. It was decided that the four of us would discuss the matter. "Diva." David addressed Emily firmly. "Firstly, apologize to Susie." However, Emily refused to apologize. Instead, she crossed her arms defiantly. "Why should I apologize to an old woman? I thought Susie would handle the household chores, so I agreed to live together. But my workload hasn't decreased as I expected. It's only gotten worse." Emily's next words were even more shocking. "No matter what anyone says, I won't change. From now on, you'll all do as I say. Oh, but Susie and David are useless. You two old hags can leave since you don't even contribute to the household chores." Her words ignited a fire within me. Frankly, it gave me the creeps. From her serious demeanor to her sudden shift to a cutesy persona, I couldn't help but wonder how many faces Emily could wear. Regardless, one thing was clear. I couldn't trust her, no matter which version showed up. Realizing the futility of continuing the conversation, I simply replied, "No, thank you," and promptly ended the call. I blocked her number and barred her from all messaging apps to prevent further contact. My husband, observing my actions, followed suit. As a united front, we decided to cut off all communication from Emily indefinitely. Later in the afternoon, Lawrence called me. "Mom, I've divorced Emily. I left the house early this morning and just submitted the divorce papers." He explained that when he had informed Emily of his decision the previous night, her response had been dismissive. "Try if you can." With no hesitation, Lawrence proceeded with the divorce. Upon hearing this news, I couldn't help but feel relieved. Staying with someone like Emily would never lead to happiness. I shared with Lawrence that Emily had called earlier, acting strangely cutesy. Lawrence's expression soured at the mention of Emily's behavior. You know, back when Emily was rebellious, she would resort to acting cute to smooth things over with her boyfriend whenever things got awkward. She's incredibly naive if she thinks that tactic will work now that we're all adults. His sentiment resonated with me completely. Emily's been cheating too. What, really? I was genuinely taken aback. The thought that she would add infidelity to her already despicable behavior was beyond belief. Her claims of illness seemed increasingly dubious to me. She appeared perfectly healthy and went out far too often. Suspecting there was more to her story, I decided to hire a private investigator. The results were shocking. Emily had been cheating with an unknown man. Lawrence even provided photographic evidence showing Emily kissing a young man in public, his green hair making him stand out. I warned Emily that I pursue legal action against her, and I fully intend to. I'll also seek damages from her affair partner, Lawrence informed me. As I examined the photos he sent to my phone, Emily's nonchalant attitude in response to the accusations puzzled me. Then why did she call me? I pondered aloud. Who knows? Maybe she wanted to know where I was after I moved out. Emily never expected me to leave. She thought if she acted tough and intimidating, I'd stay, Lawrence surmised. But now that I'm gone for real, I think she panicked and tried to win me back. I sighed deeply. Regardless of her motives, I had no desire to aid someone like her. I hoped she would experience the full weight of loneliness on her own. After some time, my husband Lawrence and I managed to secure a new apartment where we could all live together. Initially, we contemplated evicting Emily from our old house and returning there. But considering its size and potential vacancy in the future, we deemed it more practical to sell it off. Lawrence agreed, expressing his willingness to part with the property. Living there isn't a necessity for me. Selling it sounds like the best option, he remarked. As for Emily losing her place, it was of little concern to us. With the help of relatives, we returned to the old house to retrieve our belongings. To our dismay, Emily greeted us with a smug grin, suggesting that we resume living together. I realized I can't bear loneliness. Wouldn't it be better for us all to live together again? Plus, I want to save money and avoid paying Lawrence any alimony, she proposed audaciously. Her bold request ignited my simmering anger. If you're going to make a request, at least do so humbly. This isn't a matter for jest. No matter how you plead, I won't entertain it, I snapped. David, my husband, interjected with a cold tone. We're selling this house, so leave promptly and fulfill your obligations to Lawrence. I could never forgive you. Stop attempting to reignite our relationship. Lawrence echoed his sentiments firmly. Emily's flirtatious facade crumbled at his words. Lawrence has a stable income, so I initially thought marrying him would allow me to relax and become a housewife. But now, there's no ulterior motive. I truly love Lawrence. And of course, I need both of you, Susie and David, Emily insisted. However, her words did little to quell the seeking anger within us. Mine, David's, and Lawrence's, only serving to stoke the flames further. In that tense moment, a previously silent relative, who had been observing the situation, couldn't remain silent any longer. They interrupted Emily with a firm voice. Emily, you are a despicable woman. If you have so much to say, why don't we settle this with a fair fight? You seem confident about your strength. With a hint of intimidation, the relative revealed their physical prowess, reminding Emily that they had competed in a national karate competition. This relative in their 30s was well known for their strength, and we had called them in case Emily decided to cause trouble. Sensing the imminent threat, Emily recoiled. No, I don't want to fight. Once you leave, don't ever bother Susie and the rest again. Leave quickly, but before you do, offer a proper apology, the relative warned in a low voice, exuding an intimidating presence. Emily, subdued by the imposing atmosphere, acquiesced with a whimper. Emily's sudden change in demeanor caught us off guard as she swiftly replied, Yes, I understand. I'll leave immediately. I'll leave all my large belongings here. I'm truly sorry, she groveled. Good riddance. Packing her belongings and departing, the relative smirked. It was evident that Emily's tough facade crumbled in the face of those she perceived as stronger. As David, Lawrence, and I watched her retreat, we couldn't help but burst into laughter. With the nuisance finally gone, our moving preparations proceeded seamlessly, and we successfully relocated to our new home without any trouble. Following her departure, Emily rented an apartment and began living alone. True to Lawrence's warning, he filed for alimony, which Emily and her lover promptly paid, likely due to the involvement of a lawyer. It appeared that Emily couldn't stand up to someone with greater power, as my relative had predicted. Since then, I've kept my distance from Emily, but I've heard about her activities through various sources. News reports and conversations with acquaintances have painted a picture of Emily's life following her departure. Initially, Emily depleted most of her savings to fulfill her alimony obligations. With plans to marry her former affair partner and rely on his income, she was left in the lurch when he severed all ties. Desperate for stability, she attempted a job at a private company only to quit abruptly after clashing with her boss. In a shameless bid for financial support, she approached me, my husband, and Lawrence at our workplaces, but we steadfastly ignored her pleas, causing her to eventually give up. Facing mounting debt and rejection from her former associates, Emily's desperation led her to assault one of her gang members in a fit of rage, resulting in her arrest and subsequent imprisonment. My husband, Lawrence, and I couldn't help but feel that she had reaped what she sowed. Emily had a history of troublemaking, never showing any remorse for her actions. It seemed only fitting that she faced the consequences of her behavior behind bars, where she could hopefully reflect on her choices. In stark contrast, my husband, Lawrence, and I were enjoying peaceful, contented lives. The three of us lived harmoniously together, and we even had plans for a trip on our next extended weekend. Our apartment offered the convenience of easy cleaning and proximity to the station, making it a wise choice for our new home. We were determined to continue cherishing our tranquil existence as a family of three.